Boy Manning here, in charge today. It's gonna be a different feel.
Yo,
No, I'm gonna try to channel my inner John here.
Green Teamer
'Cause
edition, everybody.
it's no,
Enough of that
it
boomer
was
slander.
it was
No boomer
trending in that
slander.
direction, Jimmy. After that brilliant third quarter, 30 to
Brilliant.
18. But
Another word that we're going to use for you. Okay.
well, you'll like this one. How about a horrific fourth quarter for the Celtics? Does that fit the bill on your adjective scale?
That one is accurate, actually. Yeah, we'll give you that one.
Celtics lose 192. Sherrod Blakely is here in Atlanta, State Farm Arena. Welcome in, Sherrod. Jimmy in the
What up,
attic.
Sherrod? Up in the
And,
loft. Up in the loft, Bobby. We're classy in 22 here.
The loft. That's like
Finished
that's
loft.
like
Oh,
that's like
geez.
garbage man and sanitation worker or something like that, right?
Absolutely.
But
All about the semantics. It's
Back
all
to
about
the
the semantics.
sanitation workers out there.
that's the word. This is just
Speaking of
so
sanitation,
yeah, cleaning up, right? The Hawks in the fourth quarter and just trash performance by the Celtics in the offensive end and allowing those breakouts on the Atlanta side and turning the ball over on 4 out of 5 possessions there and having no offensive rhythm or structure whatsoever there in the fourth. Tatum, Brown, turnover messes. The dropped rebound, I thought emblematic of what was basically another spiraling set of minutes in a key situation in a game. And it was optimistic to start this month to see them come through in some of those moments, Sherrod. But this time it was just like the old Celtics pre-January. You know, the -9 team in the fourth quarter net rating. They couldn't score and they couldn't get any stops.
No, they're. I mean, listen, they're going to be like this for the rest of the season. They're going to have stretches where they look amazingly awesome, and then other stretches like we saw in the fourth quarter where they're just horrific in every sense of the word. Not making shots, turning the ball over, no flow, no fluidity at all. And it really doesn't matter what Ime does in terms of the roster. Guys on the floor are not going to get it done. We've seen that. We've seen this movie over and over again. The only solace that the Celtics can take really from this game is the fact that it's over. The fact that the game actually came to an end. They're really. I just didn't feel any. I didn't feel any. There's no. To me, there was nothing good about this. Tatum goes 5 for 17. Jalen 9 for 22. Marcus Smart had a pretty good game, 17 and 6 rebounds.
He had a big third quarter.
Yeah, he had a big third quarter, and I mean, he did his job tonight for the most part. He didn't turn the ball. I think he had one turnover. I think all game long. So, Smart, probably the one silver lining if you're the Boston Celtics, but the rest of the team was just bad. I mean,
Brown and Tatum especially. Your two guys that you look into in these moments, Jimmy.
Absolutely, it's a very obvious pattern. We've been talking about it the last couple of weeks when Tatum plays. Unfortunately, the way he's kind of been playing a lot this season, which is missing a ton of shots and putting the team in a hole early on, they lose the game. It's not rocket science. I mean, you can go through all the stats you want, but at the end of the day, if your best player is not playing, up to par, up to standards, you don't have enough talent around him to make up for that. So especially when I thought Brown, kind of if you look at the box score, he filled the stat sheet in ways, but we're not consistently. We talked about the turnovers already. What did they end up with? Like 12 at least, something like that?
No, they had close to 20. 16 was the final number.
I'm sorry. I'm just talking about just Brown and Tatum alone.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they had a big chunk of the turnovers from them.
It was 7 for Brown, I believe, 5 for Tatum.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, when the guys that you're depending on to convert on the offensive end are turning the ball over, giving you less than 0, what are you supposed to do about that? There's just not enough around them. So yeah, Marcus Smart did all he could tonight, but he's only one guy, and he is limited in what he's capable of doing on the offensive end. And it was just a matter of time before Trae Young hit some of those Trae Young type shots that he did in the game to sort of put it to bed. And the Celtics had a prime opportunity here. You're playing against one of the worst, maybe the worst defense in the NBA. You come out of the gates, 20 points in the first quarter, 15 points in the fourth quarter. Ime had enough with like 3 minutes left in the game. He was like, "Get these guys out of here. They're not ready to. They're not even in the game anymore."
And I just see this number now: 19% from 3. I mean, this team redefines.
They have raised their average for the year.
This team redefines horrific shooting. And it's one thing to hear the people on TV and on Twitter say, "Oh, if we make the shots, we'll be fine." To hear the coaching staff say it, Sherrod, when Scal's talking to them in between quarters and, the different appearances that we hear from them, and even Ime this year, his overall approach to that shooting, It's concerning. And so there's a couple different directions we can go here. I want to start with that shooting because I keep sensing again and again that they're leaning into this. And Tatum did it too. He had a key switch on Gallinari in the fourth there where he just launched a shot up over him. A couple passive possessions there from both Brown and Tatum where they're firing up shots in isolation when they could be getting downhill and aggressive like they were in the third. Scal said this during the broadcast, and I find it interesting, Sherrod. What do you do when you have those awful starts? And they started 2 for 17 from 3 in this one. Do you give it up? Do you keep rolling? It feels like their answer to that when we've asked them this year has been just keep shooting, remain confident, keep these guys feeling good from out there. But there have been numerous games this year where they just keep shooting into no end.
Well, see, here's the issue. It's not so much that they keep shooting; it's they keep shooting the same types of shots. Typically, when your jumper's not working and the three ball is not going down for you, you have to go back to what I call basketball 101. And we all know when you first start playing basketball, one of the first things that you do is you try to create mismatches and then you try to exploit those mismatches. There were a couple of instances where just the nature of switching, you had Rob Williams being guarded by Trey Young. Now, I'm not John Wooden. I'm not Mike Krzyzewski, but I'm smart enough to know that if I got a
You're
six
better than
nine guy with a 7'4" wingspan being guarded by a guy who's, maybe 6 feet, who's not exactly a defensive juggernaut, I'm going to milk that. I'm going to work the ball around so I get that matchup, and I'm going to try to exploit it. There are a number of instances where they had opportunities to really work an advantage because to me that's when you look to that. When you're trying to get something going offensively, when you're trying to establish a flow or rhythm when you don't have that. And it's something I just thought time and time again leaned on, to me, the easy route, which is to just jack up shots. You're told as a player that's how you get out of a slump. You just keep shooting. But
Mhm.
it's not the shots taken, it's the types of shots that you take. And I just didn't think they were smart about how they played this.
That's what I'm seeing in the fourths, Jimmy. It's just the easy way out. They're not working the ball around. They're not doing the things that they had success with earlier in the game, entering the offensive zone quickly, piling up stops to create those opportunities. In fact, they're shooting bad shots and turning the ball over at such a high rate in those situations that they're making it easy on the other team. And this is what's most concerning to me in these fourth quarters is they're not just falling apart offensively. I don't have the numbers in front of me on the defensive rank tonight in the fourth, but all year in these situations, they've been as bad as the Knicks, the Trailblazers. Think of the worst defensive teams in the league. That's how far they fall. And you see the body language too. You see everybody's shoulders slump at once after Romeo hit that or missed that last three on the kick out there.
Mhm.
There's just constant repeated trends. And I see people going at Ime in the comments. I'm still not there with him, but when you see this happen over and over and over and over and over and over again, that's when you start to think, like, what is Ime doing in these circumstances? That's not preventing them from not melting down here over and over again.
But part of the problem, Bobby, is that when you look at this game and you're just trying to like take the green tinted glasses off for a second and realize that they're getting a lot of open shots. They're running sets that are creating those open shots. Can't knock down 23-foot 3-point shots. That's not who his job is to put guys in position to do that.
Mm.
Tatum missed a lot of open shots. Jalen missed a lot of open shots. The turnovers that we talked about earlier, those two guys had 12 total. The entire Hawks team, they had 11. So there's so many little things that I I can't attribute Ime to being the reason
I
why this
can't
team
either.
is 500. But I will say this though. I will say this. The one thing he is not doing, the one thing, and this is unfortunately, it's been consistent. He has not figured out a way for guys to elevate their games. You don't get
Yeah.
the sense that he's doing the things necessary to get these guys to play a little bit above and beyond their ability. And
And we
you don't like to do the whole comparison thing. But when you think back to Brad Stevens' first couple of teams, those guys played above their heads almost every night. That team was not very talented, but they found a way to compete night in and night out. More times than not, they didn't win, obviously, but you felt as though he was giving them a chance to be successful. And I don't know if Ime is doing enough along those lines. And part of that has to do with the fact that you've got not one, but two All Stars, and a third player in Robert Williams, who, when healthy, isn't that far off from being in that conversation among centers. So I don't know how much of that has factored into him not being able to get these guys to elevate their play. But the bottom line is this is a 500 team that has consistently been underachieving all season long. And I think that is where a lot of the frustration for fans comes from. If this was Brad Stevens' first team and they were 25 and 25, people will be calling him coach of the year because that team talent-wise just wasn't there. But this team has the talent to be better than what we've seen so far.
So the thing
Celtics.
about just to piggyback what Sherrod's saying, the thing that everyone loved about Brad Stevens was, like he said, he was able to take teams in a time within the franchise that was, a clear rebuilding effort. Brad Stevens was a floor raiser. He could take the bottom of a team and make them better. But I think I don't know if it was Brad's fault or if it was the players from last season or last couple of seasons. He didn't really seem to be a ceiling raiser. So he could take a team with low expectations and raise them to exceed those expectations and make it sort of like a competitive, fun team. But when you had a team that was expected to win, it felt like they kind of were like they were at a point where they couldn't get past that ceiling. And now with Ime, we're not seeing either right now. And that might be, I don't know if that's just growing pains or what. It's a completely different team that he's taking over than the one Brad took over, and completely different expectations. And but the difference now is the team that Brad was essentially, I'm not going to say fired because he wasn't. He was technically promoted.
Yes,
That's a
upgraded.
story for a different, a different show. But it's it's the same core, right? So how much of that is on the coach? How much of that is on the players? Because at some point, I mean, you can have a new coach every single year. If it's the same players who aren't sort of buying in, or you're not tapping into whatever it is to make them tick, then at some point you got to look at the players. That's why I'm hesitant to just go, oh, this is all Ime's fault, or oh, this is all Dennis Schroeder's fault, or you
No,
got
it's nobody's fault.
Of the team.
And we're gonna get to Smart in a minute. I feel a similar way about Smart. And obviously, we went at it over Smart in the group chat for much of this game. How I feel basically is that he's not the problem, but he's certainly not the solution in these spots either. And I do wonder how he could get propped up in these situations. Because, listen, I haven't gone all the way as some people have in saying that if you give him the ball more and you make him the proper point guard, and if you just give him the keys, he's going to figure everything out here. But he was kind of uninvolved through that stretch. I'm going to bring in Josue here. He is also down in Atlanta. We'll put the Atlanta crew together.
Can you hear us?
They didn't let me in, man. They wouldn't let me do a show from the club. They wouldn't let me do a show, man. They wouldn't let me.
Dude, I told everyone that you were going to be at Magic City for this show. There's a lot of people here tonight that are watching this show thinking that you're going to be coming from Magic City, man. And look at you.
It takes too long for him to get there.
No.
Not that I would know how to get there from here, but
could have used her.
I think it takes too long. I think it takes too long.
Yeah, no, Gary Washington probably
knows.
You had no idea.
I'll never know what the lemon pepper wings taste like. I don't know.
Well, hey, man, if you end up there later, just hit us up. Maybe just like go live, Instagram live or something. Just let us know.
For the company, definitely.
Yeah, for the company and the company Instagram.
So this was the sequence, Josue. It's just mind-blowing what they did here. This might have been the worst fourth quarter yet. There's been a lot of bad ones, but just the way they threw away, as John would say, let me channel John, negligence for ball control. I don't know what his exact phrase is there, but that's how I'm going to describe it. Tatum losing the ball on the baseline with 8:30 to go. You have a Brown turnover mixed in there somewhere on the pass. You got Schroeder driving right in the Capella and getting blocked. You have Rob missing an alley-oop, Brown charging, Smart charging, Brown dropping a rebound out of bounds. And that's it right there, right? That's like 4 possessions out of 5 that they turn the ball over, and then the bench rolls in. Like Sherrod just said before you got in, Josue, Ime can't control any of that. There's literally nothing he can do to stop these guys from losing the ball off their legs, driving baseline, charging into guys on the dribble, and dropping rebounds, which was really rock bottom in this one.
Yeah, and Ime was asked about that after the game about playing Schroeder and Marcus Smart together, and his answer didn't make a whole lot of sense. He talked about the Hawks were going small, where I thought that it was a bit of a mismatch in terms of the way Kevin Huerter was playing. I mean, Kevin Huerter, if he wasn't getting steals, he was deflecting a lot of balls out
Did that matter? I saw people complaining about that on Twitter too. Did the lineup that was out there matter at all to the result?
No.
I don't think it mattered, but I was surprised that he did play both those guys. But at the same time,
I was
you
too,
needed
a
some
little
offensive production. You needed some sort of flow, and I think you just sort of hit the emergency button in that sense, but not in the sense of completely changing things and going away from the game plan. So I mean, you can say that he could have did things differently. Maybe you would have thought maybe some people would like to see a little more Pritchard in this one because Smart and Schroeder each had 2 fouls in the first half. But I mean, does it make a difference? I'm not quite sure if we see a different result if you were to extend the minutes to more of your bench guys.
What the hell's going on?
I think Ime went into this game with a very clear approach to how he was going to play guys. Like Pritchard was not going to play. I think that was the sentiment going into the game, and Schroeder was probably going to play less than normal. But it got to the point where Ime realized I got to try something. I need to lean on guys who I trust, and whether we want to acknowledge it or not, he trusts Schroeder in those type of situations a little bit more than Pritchard.
It's very obvious, yeah.
Yeah, and so it shouldn't be a surprise that he went to Marcus and Schroeder there because, again, the way they were playing, it's not like he's looking at his hand and he's got nothing but, like, low, it's like playing, 21 and you got, like, a 6 and a 4. What the hell are you going to do with that? You're going to play whatever the hell is on the top
you got to
of the
hit,
deck.
man, obviously.
Exactly. You're going to play with
you're going to hit.
Right.
There's no strategy.
Times.
There's no strategy with that. You're playing the cards you're dealt.
And he did mix and match throughout the game in successful ways. The small ball between the third and the fourth stopped that Atlanta bench run that killed the Celtics in the first half. You had basically Langford helping this awesome defensive effort in the third quarter. And this is what kills me about this one, Jimmy. That third quarter, I don't know what adjective I used to describe it in the group chat, but it was resilient. I think that's a fair one. It's some of the most resilient play we've seen from this team all year. They completely shut down Atlanta there, worked their way back down from 15 at halftime to within, I believe it was 3 at the turn of the third, and then just nothing from there. Not a single play in the fourth quarter to, maybe Smart answering that young floater. I thought Smart was great in this one for the third consecutive game. But he just didn't have the opportunity, and that's, I guess, where I'm going to turn this next is Smart. I thought he was just outstanding in this one, and in the fourth quarter, I hate to go in this direction, but he doesn't have the ball. I'm going to say what he said after the Chicago game. He's just standing in the corner. He's not empowered as a playmaker in that spot, and I thought, in this one, could have been a solution to some of the issues that they had there in terms of playmaking in the fourth quarter.
I think sometimes people lock into the fact that Marcus is not the greatest shooter in the world, and even on nights when his shot is falling, they still fall in that lazy narrative that he's not a good shooter. There's certain nights, and we've seen this time and time again, where Marcus Smart can be one of your top 2, top 3 shooters on the floor. I thought tonight was one of those nights. I thought he was recognizing mismatches and exploiting them repeatedly. And if he wasn't exploiting them for himself, he was creating opportunities for others. And guys just did not get it done. And down in the fourth quarter, you've got to, I think, have a bit of self-reflection if you're Jason Tatum, if you're Jaylen Brown. If I don't have it going, if the other Jay doesn't have it going, but someone else does, that someone else needs to be the one that we turn to, that we need to really funnel.
It's on them, right? This is another thing I don't think people... Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy.
It's on them. It's also on Marcus. And it's also on Ime. Who's steering the ship down the stretch? We've gone over this 100 times. Who's steering the ship?
And Jimmy, that's part of the problem.
Are they like the Hawks score? Who's in? Like, is there any direction? Is there if Marcus Smart wants the ball, or if he should be getting the ball, like that should be it. Like there should be some communication out there. It shouldn't be Marcus Smart standing in the corner, or it shouldn't be people screaming about why isn't Marcus Smart directing the offense right now? Like if idiots like us can see that, you can't tell me that the players can't see that or Ime can't see that. So it's like we've been saying this all year. There's no direction. There's no captain, figuratively, literally, to steer the ship into port when you need to park this thing and get the win. I don't know how many analogies I can make to make it clear that like there's just nobody or no direction. So part of that is if you want to blame Ime for anything, it's got to be that. There's got to be some sort of understanding of this is how it's going to roll here down the stretch in this situation. This is what we want to see. This is who we want running the sets. This is where we want you to be. If it's just freestyle mode, then you see what you see tonight. So, metaphors, not analogies. Thank you.
This is what happens when you have leadership by committee. You have games where when you need someone to kind of step to the forefront, everyone is looking at the person to their left, the person to the right. But the problem with that is no one is stepping forward. Everyone is just looking around. No one
Yeah.
is taking the bull by the horn. And I think, for Marcus Smart, I think it's a delicate situation, because I think he wants to be that person, but he understands that this is still the Jays team, and the Jays sort of kind of want to be that person. But part of understanding when to lead is also understanding when you need to step back and follow the troops that have been following you. And this was a night where Jason and Jalen, I think, really should have made Marcus Smart that guy for them down the stretch, because he was the only one that was showing signs of having one. They didn't have it. And it happens. It happens to all the great ones. There are nights where you just don't have that
So is
juice.
it
You need to
stubbornness?
be. Well, I think it's part stubbornness. I think
Is
it's
it their
also
view
part.
towards Smart? Do they not
That's
see him as a solution there?
I think that's probably part of it as well, which is too bad, because I think there's a lot that they can take away from him, particularly on nights like this where they don't have it.
I would
And,
agree with that for sure.
And
and
that's
so
what we
it's
can't answer still. You read different things about the team's view and certain people's view of Smart within. There's certainly people in there that love him. There's certainly people in there, as we read again and again, dissenting opinions as Josue's crazy image scares the kids in the chat. There we go. He's back. It's hard to tell who feels what type of way about Smart. But when you see him in these situations coming through and he's just sort of boxed out in a fourth quarter after he was, I thought, superb with shot making, with playmaking, with rebounding, that awesome box out on Capella, pushing the pace down the court, doing these things from the first through the third quarter, I felt like. And then seeing him completely uninvolved. I'm sure that's not Ime. I'm sure Ime's seeing what he's doing through the flow of the game before that. So you look to Tatum, especially, because Brown doesn't have the ball in his hands outside of his bench unit minutes. It's Tatum who's in full control in the fourth quarter. And I have a lot of gripes from Tatum out of this one, not only from the end of the game, where he was obviously a disaster, but the beginning, where I thought Onyeka Okongwu, who's just this awesome young center for the Hawks, completely manhandled him defensively in the post. Came from the weak side, blocked his shot. Tatum didn't even see him coming. Deterred interior penetrating, and overall Tatum was just trying to go right at him instead of moving him in a different direction and creating some second level drives. And those are the type of things that Smart can see and can do on the drive and on the dribble and with the ball in his hands. But Tatum still doesn't really have that skill set in terms of commanding and flowing the offense right now.
Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, I agree. I agree with you, Bobby. I feel like we've seen this from Tatum a lot. His offense dictates his entire game, his entire personality,
his defense,
everything. I think, I obviously I'm not there, but I think I saw him kind of, focusing on a missed call at one point, and that's typical. And I do wonder if that affects his just mental out there. You have to be in the zone. This is the NBA. You can't just rely on talent like you could all throughout your career. You have to be fully engaged at all times, and the best players are. They don't take plays off or games off. They don't get sidetracked by something that isn't going their way. And I don't know. I don't have the answer for exactly what it is that's causing him to struggle the way it is, but clearly I think some of it is mental.
I thought this quote, and you hit the nail on the head there, Jimmy. This is what Ime said after the last win. Everybody kind of follows, and this is kind of an interior view of the mood of the team based on whether Tatum's succeeding or struggling. He says everybody kind of follows Brown and Tatum's lead. They're buying in on both ends of the court, guarding extremely well, then carrying over from the last game offensively. That was great to come out and see. They're the two pillars and leaders. Come out and play with that intensity. Everybody seems to follow suit. Blah, 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 blah. And that was more of a positive view of it. And this is sort of the other end of the spectrum when they don't come out and do all those things. Everybody sort of wilts around them. And you saw it against Portland a week ago, too. When those guys weren't getting it done in the fourth from a playmaking and just execution standpoint, Romeo was missing shots off the ball, and Grant had a terrible game. And it's the same story again here. None of the role guys were able to contribute off of them because they weren't on their game.
Yeah, but also, Bobby, I feel like the Celtics, when it came to them getting into the teeth of the defense and doing that kick out, Atlanta was ready for that. Like, they did their homework. They did their game plan. Jaylen Brown was in Tatum, right? They were both able to get into the paint, but they weren't getting anything at the rim. There was a rim protector there. As soon as they would turn out of a double team or try to pass it out, it was either Kevin Herter or someone else, guarding the wings, and it would turn into a turnover or it would be an off-balance pass, and all of a sudden there was 5 seconds left on the shot clock. So I thought Celtics kept grinding it out. I thought the third quarter was solid in the fact that they kept staying in it, despite the fact that they were shooting so poorly. And then fast forward to, later in the third quarter, or I should say in the fourth quarter, actually. And I feel like the Celtics would get into that desperate mode where they're like, they need a bucket, and they always start to let up on defense. And that's exactly when Trae Young got hot. That's exactly when you saw that, 17-2 run by the Hawks. And the game was over just like that. It happened so quickly because that's how good this Hawks team can be on offense if you let them, of course, right? If you let their defense, you let them capitalize on their defense, but not only that, but you give them that rhythm that they had pretty much throughout and really get this crowd rocking in that fourth quarter.
I mean, let's be honest and give credit where credit is due. The Hawks are playing some of the best basketball in the NBA right now. They've won 6 in a row now. They've got DeAndre Hunter back in the fold, and he's, again, to me, he's one of the keys to that team really making some noise.
Did they play at that level in this game, though? I didn't feel like they were that great tonight.
They played solid. They were solid. They were not exceptional. But the problem is this: when you have the kind of momentum that they've got with 5 straight wins, you don't need to play great to win because you've got that confidence in you that you're going to find a way to get it done. And I thought defensively, they were pretty steady and at that end of the floor pretty much the entire game.
What's the atmosphere? What was the atmosphere like in there? Because during that Knicks meltdown, I could feel the crowd pouring down on them.
Well, the crowd was.
Go ahead, Sherrod. You tell them.
The crowd I thought was really good. And again, Atlanta historically has not had the most engaged fan base, but I thought from beginning to end, the fans were very much into this game, which is good to see.
Let me ask the other important question.
Pretty much ever since Al said what he said about the crowd, I feel like they've stepped their game up.
Was there a bike watch moment tonight?
There was a bike on the court level, but you could not see it. And so you didn't know if he was on the bike or not.
They hid the bike.
The bike was there. Nobody was on it.
Heading up to my seat, I could see it, but when I got to my seat, there's no
public view.
Yeah. So.
This is the clampdown on access continues. No more bike view this is why we're here. What else are we going to talk about after every game? It's the reason why we go.
Yeah, going back to what all you guys kind of commented on what Ime's comments were is how the team kind of goes, how Tatum and Brown go. We talked about that for a bit a couple shows ago or maybe last show, and I used the quote, attitude reflects leadership, and
demeanor.
I stand by that wholeheartedly. I love that quote. I think it means everything, and it's true.
You've talked a lot about that, Jimmy.
And there's Tatum Brown. There's 2 other players on the team somewhat capable of sparking the team. I don't know what's going on over in one of your guys' rooms. But anyways, Smart is capable of doing it. And I think Schroeder, tiny bit, kind of is capable of doing it because of his skill and his ability to sort of spark the offense. Nobody else on the team is capable of taking the reins when Tatum or Brown are, feeling off or whatever is going on with them, that they're just not showing up to the game. There's nobody else really out there. And if Smart can do it, if he wants to do it, and he will do it, but it's 2 things. It's one, he's limited in most ways offensively. He can only do so much on the offensive end. He still does need Tatum and Brown to contribute. And 2, like you guys said, if those guys aren't buying into what he says, if they've tuned him out like they tuned Brad out, then it's not going to work. And same with Schroeder. I think Schroeder is more gifted offensively than a lot of players, and he can do a lot to sort of try to get somebody in gear or get the team in gear, but it still falls on those guys to sort of piggyback off of somebody else leading the way. If Tatum and Brown can't do it every single night, I guess that's understandable. That's asking a lot, but they need to be able to at least provide secondary, second, third. They need to come in huge at some point, whether it's late in the game or whatever, so that we don't continue to have these fourth quarter meltdowns, right? And that's what they are. They're lack of execution, lack of so many things, tenacity, heart, effort, whatever word you want to use.
I don't think it's an effort thing this year. I saw that last year much more. This year, there's still playmaking. Brown and Tatum all over the boards. Well, yeah, in the key spots, I think the attention to detail wanes, and that can end up looking like effort. Like, they're not mailing it in. They'd be getting killed if they were mailing it in.
They're not
You
getting.
know,
They're not mailing it in. But first of all, they do get killed in the NBA.
in the key situation. Yeah.
They're
There's a
not
lack
mailing
of
it in.
focus.
There's not many professional athletes that mail it in unless there's a contract issue or something further going on. But I just think that when you become discouraged, you give up. And that's another word, I guess, of saying.
And he may have said that. He has said that throughout the year. Letting offense impact defense is usually how he puts it.
And we see that happen a lot with this group,
Totally.
which is really sad because that's not how this team was built. That's not how that they have been able to, make deep playoff runs during years where they weren't expected to do much other than just show up. And it's disappointing. The earlier point about Marcus Smart and leadership and things like that, he is the most equipped of all their players right now to be a leader.
Totally.
And it's frustrating that the one guy who has been here through all the hard times, through the good times, who has a certain toughness and resolve about him, is the one guy that you're not screaming at the top of your lungs to be your leader. Because the thing about it is this. Right now, when you're doing this leadership by committee bullshit, which is what they're doing, this is what happens. This is why when Ime was talking about having captains at the beginning of the season, I thought it was a great idea.
Yes.
And to me, even if guys are like, I don't know if I want to be captain, too damn bad.
Yeah, you throw them in the fire.
You listen. This is one of those times where you throw them in the deep end of the pool and see if they sink or swim.
And Ime knew what this group was.
Especially your two All-Stars. Exactly, but Sherrod, you don't think that maybe he was afraid that I was going to be like, oh, one of them is going to buckle, or I don't know. Maybe he thought that. What? I mean, looking back on it, he should have. He should have though.
The amount of time that he spent getting to know them during the Olympics, the amount of time that he has game planned against them as an assistant, he knew what he was dealing with. Whatever concerns he had from a leadership standpoint, it's not like all of a sudden that just kind of manifested itself once he became the head coach.
And this is why the Ime blame game has been unfathomable to me, because he's as well prepared as it comes.
Not unfathomable. There you go again.
I don't know.
Words, Bobby. We're working on this. We are working on this.
I don't know if that's the right SAT word, Bobby. I don't know if that's the right SAT word.
He pointed out all the issues in the preseason, whether it's leadership or the Jays playmaking or their defensive issues from last year that we saw, and just all the different things that he's hammered down, ball movement, the assist rate. It's all the same things that have played out this year. And he's drilling them again and again and again. But in the key situations, they lose those habits. It's discouraging, too, because they're at the flows of the rest of these games. And we talked about the net rating all week and where they're at in the league from a start to finish standpoint throughout games. They don't do it in the key situations. And that's what matters. And that's the gap, Jimmy, as we talked about in the group, between the people who say, look at their numbers. They're doing fine. They're trending in the right direction. They're just losing a couple games in the key situation. Well, it's like, whoa, there's one quarter that matters a lot more than all the others. And that's why their record is what it is.
Exactly.
It's a mental thing. It really is.
Well, if that's the case, I think Ime's doing a good job because he's keeping things into perspective. I mean, before this game, after shooting around, what did he say? Yeah, we're 500 and we won 2 games in a row. That's not a winning streak, There's no need to pat ourselves on the back. Let's just see if we can keep it consistent. And I think at the end of the day, he said that because he knew what he was running into. This is the Atlanta Hawks. This is one of the hottest teams in the NBA. This is their house. They know how good the Celtics have been. They know how good Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been. And I feel like their defensive game plan was to capitalize on those guys and take away their options. And the Hawks did a really good job doing that. Now, I credit the Celtics because they didn't get discouraged in themselves and start jacking up shots. Or maybe to a certain extent they did in the fourth quarter. But the first 3 quarters, they grinded it out.
I thought the third quarter was excellent, and then they just threw
it
away.
Right.
Yeah.
4 minutes into, you know what, Bobby? 4 minutes into that third quarter, the Hawks were already in foul trouble. I'm like, look at the Celtics getting to the free throw line. That was almost never happening.
But it's all for nothing.
Especially when they're playing, playing uphill. And it was all for nothing, right? Because in that fourth quarter, the Hawks still had a big lead going into it. Oh, not a big lead, but that right before the big 17-2 run. The Celtics finally got it down to a double it was a 2-possession game, and then a 17-2 run buried the
And
Celtics.
this is what I wrote for CLNS after those 2 wins. It was nice to see them check some boxes, the different things they did well through those games. But the big things, and 2 that I really highlighted were, of course, the fourth quarters. They had that 1 win against the Pacers that I guess you can feel okay about, against a G League team, essentially, teams that they were losing to before that they finally got over the hump against there. So that wasn't really an issue that they solved through some of their success through winning at 7 out of 10 before this one. But at the same time, something you talked about, Josue, it's simple to stop this team. And I almost think every team should do it. Just watch the film going into it. And I think pretty much everybody knows this at this point. Joel Embiid tweeted about it. If you pack the paint, if you drop your center, if you have any semblance of a rim protector, the Celtics aren't going to be able to get inside. They're a pretty poor mid-range shooting team, and they're going to shoot quite a few threes, and they're not good at it. So unless they get this remarkable night like they did against the Kings and they did against the team that they played prior to that, whoever that was,
The Suns?
it's going to be bad. No, the one before the Kings there. Who'd they beat? Whatever. Doesn't matter. The 2 straight wins coming into this. They hit their threes, and then coming into this, they can't find an alternative. It's simple. You just drop your center, take the paint away, and the Celtics are essentially dead offensively, and everything else flows away from them from there. Now, they can beat a Kings team that doesn't have a strong interior presence. They can play well against those teams that they can body
Against
inside.
The
Wizards. That was the one before, yeah. So that's the difference right now. They're playing well against the teams that they can get to the paint against easily, and a team like this, Atlanta, that defends the paint, as you talked about, Josue, they're dead.
Yeah, they did a really good job too.
So there they are. I mean, another horrible loss. We're rocketing toward the trade deadline. Heavy says that they're active in talks, and there was a couple interesting rumors over the last couple of days, mostly out of Bleacher Report. Our good friend Jake Fisher, who I've had on Dome Theory and is all over the place at this point with the rumors, talking about a trade that these 2 teams almost made. And this takes us back to Smart, sort of as the guy that can be dealt as their most valuable available piece, and in some ways the things that they need, whether it's organization, passing, the things that he's good at that the Celtics need him to provide, and that has allowed him to become, I think, one of their better analytics guys this season just because of the drop-off when you lose them. So you're talking about a trade here that these 2 teams discussed, Jake said. Not clear how close they came to pulling this deal off. This, of course, was before the Knicks acquired Cam Reddish for Kevin Knox in a first-rounder. But something was on the table that looked like Marcus Smart going to Atlanta, solving some of their defensive issues, secondary playmaking issues, bench problems, potentially there, and the Celtics getting a shooter, a sensational shooter in Kevin Huerter, and a guy with some shooting pedigree in Cam, who, Jimmy, I know you were very upset that they didn't kick the tires on, and they weren't mentioned in a report originally as being interested in him, but clearly they were, and they're in a much bigger deal.
Like I said to you guys, I'm glad that they were at least on the horn about it, because it tells me that they are at least active and looking to find ways to get creative and improve this, in my opinion, very stagnant and boring situational, team that we're in right now. So I'm happy to hear it. I'm obviously not happy to hear that they couldn't get anything done, but obviously Herter's still available. Collins is still available. There does seem to be smoke, maybe. I'll say maybe there's a little smoke there, and they could figure, who knows what's going to happen before the trade deadline. Something could be there in the works. I still think there's a match to be made. And so, again, I was happy to see or to hear that they were involved in the talk. That tells me that maybe Brad's at least interested in what the hell's going on, or somebody over there.
Josue, he's where you thought he was.
Just wait, he might actually be at Magic City after.
Yes.
He's got the green screen behind him, dude. He's got the
There's
green
the
screen
mute button.
behind him. Yeah, thank God, because he's got. I think somebody may have just taken the stage based on what I just heard over there. But.
Sherrod, who do you think said no here? Because that's where I'm interested in.
I think Atlanta. I think they did. Kevin
Right.
Huerter. You look at the way this Atlanta roster is structured. They've got such a they're showing signs of being a really good defensive team, which we knew they had the potential to be. But offensively, they can hit you in so many different ways with weapons, and Kevin Huerter is one of them. I'm a big Kevin Huerter fan. I've been a fan of his going all the way back when he was in college. I just think he's just one of those guys that you can plug and play him in any lineup, any roster. I think he's one of those guys who's kind of like a borderline starter, super sub type. And the way that he competes. That's the other thing too that I think often gets overlooked for a guy like him. You look at his shooting, and I think he is a decent playmaker, but he competes defensively. He's not going to win many of those games, but he's not going to back down. There was a sequence where Jaylen Brown was just actually giving him the business, and then next thing you know, he comes down, he drains the three. Defensively, physically taking on elbows from Tatum and Jaylen Brown and all that kind of stuff, and just bouncing back up, ready to play and compete. So I like him a lot, and obviously the Hawks do as well.
Would you consider a trade based on? Would you guys, both of you guys, Sherrod and Josue and Bobby, would you guys? I know Bobby's answer already. Would you guys consider a trade that involves Smart and Huerter?
I mean, I would consider it. Yeah, I don't know if I'd pull the trigger on that, but I would definitely, absolutely consider it though.
There's a lot of people that would say, yeah.
Honestly, the first thing that crossed my mind when I read the report was the Hawks must have said at the end of the day, it was like, no, they must have thought about it long and hard. And I don't know. I mean, not to say that I would have been shocked if the Hawks pull the trigger on a deal like that, but it would have clearly been one of those, let's just do it now.
Kind of fits with them though, like Smart next to.
No,
feels like a pretty good.
He does.
Yeah,
he's exactly who they need.
I
just think it's the two players, the 2-for-1 that would kind of surprise me.
Yeah. Right. But if you can do let's say, okay, that deal's gone now. Like Huerter's still available, Smart's still there.
Who I'm looking at? It's Collins.
They're the main pieces in the deal. Is that something that you guys would be cool with?
Straight up, I don't know.
Here's the thing that you got to keep in mind though with the Atlanta Hawks. Okay, they just got DeAndre Hunter back, who, newsflash, is really good. Really good, versatile defender. Didn't shoot the ball particularly well tonight, but I mean, he's one of those guys that has the talent and ability to guard 1 through 5 if necessary. He's that talented. When you've got a guy that has that kind of Swiss knife versatility defensively, and then you add someone, let's say Marcus Smart, you add a Smart to the mix. I don't know if you're going to be elevating your organization, particularly when you take away a guy like Huerter, who's a very good shot maker. And as I mentioned earlier, competes hard. So I can understand why the Atlanta Hawks want to keep their core guys together, at least through the duration of this season, to see if they can build off what they were able to do last year in the playoffs. Because, again, they've had, like everyone in the NBA, they haven't had the kind of continuity because of health and safety and injuries, illnesses, all that stuff. But we have seen this team in their core, when they're at their best, they are one of the best in the NBA. So,
yeah. Plus, Huerter is one of those guys that just always has his hands up. I mean, man, that's that kind of effort. If you're the Hawks, you're like, let's see what we can do with this. Let's see how far we can go in the playoffs, and then reassess come the off season. But it'll be interesting to see if they're trying to bolster that roster before the trade deadline between now and then, because the way things are rolling right now, it's going to be tough for them, because obviously guys like Huerter and Hunter, those are the names that are going to be mentioned in trades, and maybe they're not quite ready to part ways with those guys.
They're in an interesting spot because they'd obviously prefer to trade Gallinari. That's a guy that they don't really have much use for right now. Bogdanovich is only a slight step up from there, so that's big money between two guys that they would love to dump off on someone. And maybe the Celtics, as shooting starved as they are, would be willing to take on some of that. Of course, they have their own tax restrictions now that we're talking about, limiting them in that regard. So you're looking at a move like this, I think, to reduce costs, because I just looked at Huerter's extension. It's actually smaller than Smart's per year. So you would be saving a little bit of money each year. You address the shooting issue in some way. He's only a 37% three-point shooter, which is way better than Smart, but it doesn't single-handedly solve your shooting issues there.
You're not going to single-handedly solve it, though.
No, yeah, you have to address it in a ladder.
But deeper.
Here's the tricky thing, though. You're giving up the guy among your core that has the most value and the only untouchable one for just one small piece of addressing the issue here, and you lose something defensively.
The only untouchable what? What are you talking about?
Out of all your core, let's say 4 players, the only guy who's not untouchable is Smart.
Not untouchable. Okay.
Yeah, at
Yeah,
least from
Jimmy.
what we're
I thought he
hearing.
said. Jimmy. I thought he said the same thing too. I was just
I
like,
think he did. I
what?
think we got a peek inside what he really thinks for a second there.
No, but here's the point I'm trying to make. And
Freudian
Reddish is
slip.
involved.
I know what you're trying to make,
Was that
Bobby. You have one chance to trade
You have
Smart. You
one
want to make sure
shot.
Was that a Freudian slip?
it
Maybe.
was.
No, I'm just saying you can't be too loose with letting him go. You have to make the right deal because that's your one shot, as Jimmy just said. So the deal I've loved for a long time that I'm going to press the Hawks to make as hard as I can if I'm Brad is to give up Collins. Because is Collins a point guard? No. Is he a defender? Lord knows. No. But is he a better player than Marcus Smart overall? Slam dunk, yes. And that's the kind of move I think you have to make for Smart. The Hawks get something different than Collins that they need. The Celtics get something different than Smart that they need. You still kind of have holes in two spots if you're those teams, but that's what a trade is. You give up a little bit on both ends and you get something that you need, and maybe the mix is better. Because, listen, let's not talk like the Hawks are completely solved here. They're still outside of the playoff picture in the East. This guy's owed a ton of money. I love the idea of Collins in Boston, especially playing next to Rob.
Listen, that sounds great. I don't know how you're going to convince the Hawks to do that. Collins has to be regarded as a more valuable player than Smart. I know people.
He gave Celtics the business. Hey, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. I mean, Bobby, be real. I mean, like, no, GM is going to make that trade. I mean, you'd have to include some other things, I guess. I mean, I think it would really have to be a situation where they wanted to get rid of Collins. Like, talent-wise, Collins, of course, is better than Smart. I think people need to understand that a Herder level type player is probably in line with what Smart's going to bring you. He's not an all-star player. He's never been one. He never will be one. He's very good at what he does, which is, provide some intensity on the defensive end, heart, attitude, all those things. Not a great shooter. Never was, never will be. But offense is more valuable than defense. We'll all say it here. Bobby hates to admit it because he loves talking about defense. But guess what? The Hawks are one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA, and they beat you pretty handily tonight because shots were falling. And same thing with, we're talking about a guy like Herder and a guy like Smart. At the end of the day, I think most teams are going to want the offensive player. So that's kind of the level of player that you're looking at. And is Herder going to solve all your issues? No. But if this is the deadline type deal, this season's a lot. This season's over. Doesn't matter what your team looks like. If you can get a player that you think can help you next season, you go ahead and make that deal. And then you use the offseason to try to solidify things and make it make sense before the season starts. I don't care what they look like the rest of the season. If they can do a deal at the deadline, it's going to set them up for next year in a way.
And I think that has to be the mindset. I mean, when you look at this Celtics team, clearly they need a playmaker. They could use another big. They can use some depth at the wing, and if they can adjust one of those key areas between now and the trade deadline, you do that. As long as it doesn't devastate your salary cap and put you in a bind where you can't necessarily make moves in the offseason. So they're going to have some options, but again, it takes two to tango. I mean, you can put together the greatest deal in the world if you're the Boston Celtics, but if you don't have a partner, it's useless.
So we can talk about the offseason and what might come. But what we know right now is a guy like this is potentially available. And I said this last year, too, because they never really wanted to sign Collins, it felt like. And then he played so good in the playoffs that they were like, all right, here's the max. They gave him this massive deal. And now they're kind of in a cap bind here. I just think you're in an advantageous position where, yes, maybe you have to give up more than Smart a pick. Maybe you have to give up multiple picks here. But this is a guy who's young, in his early 20s, is locked up long term, and could potentially increase your talent core on the roster significantly and continue to grow into the future. Maybe Smart's not the guy they're looking for. This could be a deal where the Hawks say, let's get Brown here. And I think we've heard that in the past too when it's come to Collins conversations. I just think that you can't get too greedy and look to the future and say, oh, we're going to have these other options available to us in the summer. When something like this that can really improve your team is something that you can go all in on. And right now, I felt the same way about Sabonis. I felt the same way about, let's say, these B-level stars. They're not Beal. They're not Levine. They're not these guys that are going to transform the franchise potentially. But you don't have a shot at those guys anymore in my mind. I just don't think you do, given the trajectory of the team, given what you have to give up. and given other destinations that these guys could get to, Philadelphia, Golden State, all the rest. So you're looking at a B-level big three guy. I don't know if is it Collins, is it Sabonis, is it one of these guys? These are the guys you really have to consolidate to go in on, I think.
Yeah, but Bobby, you're naming people who you may say is B-list all-star, but their teams are hoping for them to be A-list. Or they think they're on the verge of being A-list, or they think that they're already there and then
Well, why are they
going through their
available
beginning
then?
stages.
If they get
Just
blown
this-
away, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, doing their teams doing their due diligence to see what the value's like. I mean, if you're a team like Indiana, I mean, you felt like you've been so close the last couple of years or so, or I don't know, the last 3 years, 2 to 3 years, in one way or another, you felt like you were almost there. So I think they're doing a good job of just seeing how much value the rest of the league, values these guys. But guys like Sabonis, man, like he's a future perennial all-star. I mean, if that's not the case, 7 years from now, I think within the next 2 or 3 years, Indiana's they're going to try to find that out before they go ahead and deal him. And even if they do think about making that deal, with any team that looks at the Celtics, they're looking at their 2 all-stars, Bobby. Especially if they're giving up one of their pillars, one of their centerpieces. They're not gonna just accept Smart and a couple of picks, and say, all right, well, that's the best you guys can do. No, they're gonna keep it moving, and that's another team.
Right.
Sherrod, they've been a team that's been kicked around with, and this is where I think the Celtics are going to run into some trouble at the deadline, is this Ben Simmons situation. Sure, if the Celtics are going to throw Brown out there, these teams are all going to listen. If not, then they're all looking at Ben, because would you rather have Smart or Ben Simmons? It's kind of a no-brainer there. If the Hawks could flip Collins for Simmons, or the Kings could flip all their stuff for Simmons, this is going to be the domino that decides everything else and really dictates what the Celtics can get done here, I think, is whether or not he moves. And today, the signal from Woj, and you try to read the tea leaves, right, Sherrod? Like, who's trying to send what message here? The Kings are out, apparently, according to Woj. They're saying, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. And, that's something that the Sixers have tried doing too. We're not going to send them out unless it's for the top 25 player or whatever, so don't even bother throwing this other stuff at us. In my mind, this is still Philly posturing, and the Kings are just trying to get some amount of leverage back over them because they haven't been interested in doing a Sacramento deal. But if it's not, and they could, or if it is, and it's potentially Philly able to do, let's say, Simmons and Harris, who the reports have said Sacramento is willing to take on for a healed Barnes, and I don't know whether it's Foxwell or Halliburton. I don't think you can go wrong either way if you're Philly. That to me is a deal that, sure, you're not getting that big time player if you're Philly, but wow, you're dumping Harris and you're getting all these shooters back and you're getting a potentially star guard from Sacramento back. I don't think they're going to ever do better than that in my mind, even with this Harden stuff floating around.
Yeah, I agree.
From the very outset, Sacramento was the one team that made the most sense. When you look at the asset that they have to offer, when you look at the fact that most teams are going to be reluctant to give Philadelphia an all-star caliber player for a guy who has a flaw to his game that isn't necessarily because he's not good at it. It's because he doesn't try to get better at it. That's why Sacramento. I'm struggling to understand why Philadelphia does not be more aggressive than that, other than just posturing and trying to squeeze as much as they can out of them. But I think this is just part of the process. I think this is part of Sacramento's plan to.
I see what you did there, Troy.
I still think they're the team. I still think that's where he's going to wind up. That makes the most sense.
Getting rid of Harris's massive contract alone is such a win for Philly if Sacramento is willing to take that on.
They're playing hardball right now. I wouldn't be shocked if they come to they agree on a deal within the next couple of weeks. Because if you're Philly, I mean, it doesn't get better than that. I mean, like the fact that the Sacramento Kings are willing to take a chance on this guy. I mean, and all the weapons that they have, whether you're talking about shooting, whether you're talking about another point guard. I mean, the Kings have always been sort of that team that we've discussed because not only do they have the weapons, but they have the market that would just welcome a guy like Ben Simmons. I mean, they're gonna, regardless of how things go, people are gonna come see those games. People are gonna go see Ben Simmons. They haven't had a guy like that or someone that could, a 2-3 time All-Star in quite some time. And at the end of the day, if you're the Sacramento Kings, you take a risk on a All-Star point guard, a veteran point guard. I mean, yeah, it's a big risk on someone like Ben Simmons, but what's the alternative for the Kings, right? I mean, they're in the wild west, just trying to compete and just trying to make the playoffs.
Bottom
me say
line is
that.
the Sacramento. Jimmy, let me just jump in real quick and I'll shut
Yeah.
up. The bottom line is this: if you're Sacramento, this is a deal that, first of all, it gets you attention. Other than the fact that you're just a horrible organization, it actually gets you positive attention. You add a player
Some
who
defense.
who is going to give you some defense, which you have lacked forever and a day. And for Ben, you don't have the pressure of winning a championship. Hell, you can go out there and be a mediocre 500 team, and they will put a damn statue up of you at some point. That's how bad they are. And for Ben,
They'll bring
you know,
back the cowbells.
and for Ben, he can continue to get in clutch situations and pass the teammates because he doesn't want to get fouled, and no one's going to trip about that in Sacramento
Right.
because they're just happy to have him in town. They're happy that they're getting some buzz because of his presence. That's why, to me,
For real.
I don't think there's another NBA city that has the assets that should intrigue Philadelphia and is willing to put those assets on the table like Sacramento. To me, it's a no-brainer if you're Philly to do that deal.
So let me say
Go
a
ahead,
couple
Jimmy.
things. If it's true, if it is actually true that the Kings are like, nah, we're good, this is actually the lowest moment of Ben Simmons' career in many low moments, because you're talking about a franchise that literally breeds losing, right? And like they have every reason.
And they're like, nah, we're good.
If they're like, nah, we're good to you, bro, like that's it. Like call it a career, man, because you can't really come back from that. But that goes to show how bad it's now got for Ben Simmons, is that the Sacramento Kings are being like, you know what? We're just gonna lose forever instead of like taking a risk with you, bro. Like we're actually good. And honestly, there is a little bit of a risk there, because if you are the Sacramento Kings and you really do want to kick that image that you are just like the worst franchise in professional sports, not even basketball, but like honestly, they're up there with one of the worst franchises. I feel bad saying it because I'm sure there's a lot of good fans, and I like
They're
some
down there.
players.
They're about to break the NBA record for years in a row missing the playoffs.
Right. And you know, there might be an aspect of that to the Kings where it's like, why do we want to bring on this guy that's pretty much disliked by everybody at this point? Players, fans. I mean, you guys are acting like trading for him is going to be this big boon to them, but I don't know, man. I think a lot of NBA fans are completely out on this guy right now. I mean, he has no competitive spirit, apparently. Shaq ripped him yesterday, which I thought was pretty on point with what Shaq said. Was basically like, listen, all great players get criticized, you know, and they all take it like men, and they get up the next morning and they get to work and they go out there and they try to prove people wrong. And Shaq used Joel Embiid as a perfect example. I mean, who's been harder on Joel Embiid than Shaq and Charles Barkley on TNT? Can you name me one player that they've been harder than? Maybe Dwight Howard back in the day, but like right now it's Joel Embiid. And what does Embiid do? He goes out there, he drops 30 points a night, putting the team on his back, keeping
He's
six
been unreal. And what a disrespect to him that this drag out's been doing. Get him some help.
Right.
Get
So
him a
it's like,
championship team in place this year.
But it's like, what is really going on with Simmons? I'm not going to pretend to know what's going on in his brain or in his personal life. But if you're the Kings, it is a massive risk. Even though like it's like, oh, what do they have to lose?
It's not a massive risk for the Kings. They have nothing to lose. We just saw them lose by 60.
Well, I just made
all they do is
why they
lose.
Do have something to lose. That could set them back another who knows how many years. And I know that I went on the show last year and I was like, oh, Celtics should at least pick up the phone on Simmons.
It's hard to be.
But now
It's hard to be set back when you are the back of the pack. Yeah. It's hard to be set back when you're already. There's literally no one behind you.
And I get what
I
you
understand that, but what I'm saying is like, I mean, you can really.
If you're Sacramento, you don't want to get
back of the pack, you know, like, and they could really hurt themselves by trading anything of value. I mean, like we said with the Celtics, it's like they have one shot to make this trade and do the right thing, and if they blow it, then there goes the next 4 or 5 years. So I'm sure the Kings are thinking the same thing. Now, that being said, yeah, they have less to lose, but it just goes to show how ugly it's gotten for Simmons. And one other thing, and maybe this has nothing to do with it. Maybe the Sixers aren't doing it because there was another rumor that came out, or a report, if you want to call it, that they have their eyes on James Harden.
I don't understand this one. Now, I'm buying
it. Well, this has to do more with
it. I can kind of understand it, but
I'm buying it because I think a lot of credible people have, endorsed it and talked about it seriously, and it said it's a real possibility that Harden could jump ship and go to Philly in a sign and trade there. And Simmons always did make some sense for Brooklyn. We thought it would be Kyrie. I guess now it's Harden that would be swapping there. I just don't know how, if you're Brooklyn, you just let Harden walk to Philly. At some point, if you're a team, I know the agents have massive pull and these stars can do what they want. How do you allow Harden to just blow you off if you're the Nets, walk to your rival, your main competitor there, solidify them as a champion possibly, and you're taking this Simmons flyer that you have no idea. You haven't seen him play since 2021. I don't know how you do that if you're Brooklyn, and that's a card that the Nets can pull. They have to do the sign and trade.
You do that if he has told you he's not coming back. You do that if he indicates to you through either directly or indirectly that this is it. I'm done with this. Because at that point, you're trying to salvage whatever you can of a relationship that has clearly run its course. And what better way to salvage that when you can get a 23, 24-year-old defensive-minded all-star who's 6'10" point guard.
It does make a little sense. I hate it, but it does.
And Bobby, that's how I feel. I hate it. But I can understand if you're Brooklyn, if it came to that. Now, I don't think it's at that point. I still think he wants to play this thing out in Brooklyn and see if they can win a championship. Because remember, the whole point of him coming to Brooklyn was
he can
to
do that.
Yeah. And so, Philadelphia, I think, is more intriguing because of the success that they're having with Joel basically being a one-man show. And the guy that put way more money in James Harden's pocket than any human being imaginable is running the show.
If that's on the table, I kind of get Philly waiting this out. If you can get this done in the summer, it's a massive risk because you could make a smaller deal now and win a championship this year. But if you're pairing Harden and Embiid, which is crazy enough what we talked about a year and a half ago when that whole Harden ordeal got going in Houston, and Simmons would have been going down to Houston, if they just end up getting traded for each other in the end anyway, that would just be insane. But it does make sense. Pair Harden and Embiid together. That would be like Kobe and Shaq almost. Like the best thing sense.
Wonder if
but why would they do that though? Like if you're Brooklyn, like why give your division rival or whatever that sort of asset? Like,
I feel the same way, Josue. It's just I've seen like the teams fold in these situations when the players say, "This is where I'm going, get it done." And Simmons, I guess, is some kind of compensation for Brooklyn because then you have Kyrie, Durant doing all your scoring, and Simmons is the third wheel passing.
You do it like Sherrod said. You do it if you think Harden's checked, if Harden's done. If he's sick of Kyrie and he doesn't know what's going to happen with them. You do it if you get somebody in Simmons's ear and you get the vibe or the idea that he is, still capable of being the old Ben Simmons and still willing to buy in. Because Simmons would be a great fit for the Nets, just like Harden would be a great fit for the Sixers. All things being equal, I bet you those two teams would probably like to make that trade, right? So that's why I think it makes sense. And what I also wonder is, how vocal has Embiid really been in what I would consider would be an extremely frustrating situation, unless Embiid is in on the understanding that, hey, if you let this play out, we're going to get you a guy like Harden or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I guess we'll find out if the trade deadline comes and goes and nothing happens. Maybe we'll hear from Embiid in another way. But I feel like he's just been kind of way more business-like than I've seen him in past seasons. Maybe that's just maturity or whatnot. But, I mean,
I'm worried because
firmly in the MVP case. And if I was a betting man, I would have bet on him with some decent odds a few weeks ago because there was always that possibility that he could do what he's doing right now. And he hasn't been the front runner or even in the top couple players all year. So, I mean, what he's doing right now is awesome. And you know what else he's doing? He's putting himself as like Philadelphia's number one athlete. And that's a place you want to be in Philadelphia. You want to be loved by that city because we know what it looks like when you're on the opposite end. And what it looks like is you're holding out, you're not playing.
But what does Ben do when the deadline comes and goes and he's still there? Is he just going to sit at home till
probably
October?
Feels like that's who he is, man. I mean, that's
probably
feels like
that's something that could. That's something that could, and I've talked about this, like we don't know what Simmons really is anymore. It's been so long. He just keeps sitting out till October, and the word is, like, who knows what kind of his work ethic is through all of this. Like, who is Ben Simmons in October of next year, whenever he's going to show up again to a team?
That's what I'm saying. That's why I think the Kings are like, well, wait a second. Maybe we, as much as we do lose, we don't want to, like, lose 80 games.
Yeah, I mean, Nets should be worried. Nets should be worried about that too. It is crazy that this has become a real conversation.
But that's the big difference between trading to a team like the Nets and trading to a team like the Sacramento Kings, right? There's so much pressure with one team as opposed to the other one, and I think Ben Simmons is the guy right now that needs to go to a team like Sacramento and sort of rebuild that confidence or whatever that's missing out of him. But I'll tell you this much: going to Brooklyn is not going to solve that. It's not going to solve his late game execution. It's not going to solve him being afraid to take layups when there's 3 minutes left in the game.
But he won't have
granted,
to.
he won't be.
That's the
Granted, he
thing.
won't be
Could
asked.
be a
he
better
won't be-
role.
He won't be asked to score, but it still doesn't say that he won't buckle under pressure. And you think guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are going to be patient with someone like that? I don't think so. I find that very hard to believe, especially two guys who
It's a good fit, though.
they both won. Okay, they both won before. I don't see them having patience with someone like Simmons, and I definitely see them being way more demonstrative of the teammates than guys like Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid. I think Joel Embiid had more patience with Simmons than those guys would.
It's interesting too, because you do have problems with each of these guys. Josue talks about those with Ben and fitting in. Like the Nets haven't done the best job making all these pieces come together, and of course, getting role guys to help out too this year has been a disaster for them. And then you look on the Phillies side. If you're getting Harden at this age and he wants a new contract, and he's in the physical shape that we've kind of seen him over the past couple of years, Philly might not be getting that Houston Harden here, and all of a sudden that's another hit to Embiid's career. And Embiid has just kind of had the worst luck career ever when you consider what he's put in from his own perspective, missing the first 2 years, going through the Simmons ordeal, years, going back years, not just the last year, what happened there. That's been a ugly fit and odd pairing for a while now. And they're just going to continue it, I guess. And I don't know. People asking in the chat, what's the Celtics tie-in here? You're kind of, I said it at the beginning, you're just kind of stuck. If everybody's focused on this and everybody's just holding and waiting for this to be the domino that falls, you don't really have a move to make if you're the Celtics. So Jimmy could be right. Maybe that Herder one was the thing to shake it up. I don't think so, but it does sound enticing, being able to get that shooter, a young guy who's locked up long-term, and that flyer in Reddish, which I didn't love, but I understood why some people did.
Is there a situation where the Celtics are interested in Simmons? Sherrod, Josue?
No.
I just can't see it happening.
Obviously, at this point,
He's not built for that city, man.
Wouldn't cost. Obviously, wouldn't. Tatum and Brown would not be part of the conversation. But if there was a situation where you could acquire him, maybe it costs you Rob and whatever to make the money. You need a lot to make the money work. To be completely honest, Smart would probably have to be in there.
I would trade everything, but
Smart, Horford.
And I don't think it's enough. We know how Morey's approaching this. It's
well, I know
that's
what I'm saying. Like I even though you guys wouldn't do it, I don't even know if this. I don't think the Sixers might not do it. So
Morey has played this well. It's frustrating. It might blow up in his face, but to go from nothing to potentially getting Harden is, and they could have had Harden to begin with. I don't think he was there when that was the situation. They probably would go back in time and do that and be in a much better place. But if they still in the end ended up getting Harden out of it, that's impressive GMing from Morey to basically go from teams asking for Simmons for nothing to being in a place of power there where he can just pull Harden back this offseason by sheer will. And that'd be a victory. But if he screws this up and Embiid doesn't win a championship, considering what Embiid is doing right now, that would be despicable, because Embiid is doing everything he needs to do right now to deliver a championship. He just doesn't have the help.
Best years of his career. He's had some major injuries. He's, who knows how long he's going to be playing at this level, and it's being completely wasted. And man, it takes a lot of balls for Ben Simmons to do what he's doing just because Doc Rivers hurt your feelings in a little press conference after you complete.
And then they had to be made to feel bad about it.
That's literally what that's exactly
Check
what
yourself,
and it was
man.
true. It was all true. He was horrible.
Dry your eyes and get out there. Come on, man. Like, what are you doing? Like,
we can talk about Thibault's missed layup or whatever it was, the free throw and this and that. Simmons took 2 shots in 7 4 quarters.
That presser, he was like,
"Hey Ben, spot the lie, bro." Like,
would you want me to lie? Like, come on.
34% free throw. It was.
Do you think you're a championship point guard? Do you think you're a championship point guard? Like, what do you think? Come on.
Like,
and I'm still gonna hold it against them,
man. Like, you can literally prove everybody wrong. Just you got to get on the court to do it.
I'm still going to hold it against him for not going to play for Australia. What are the Celtics looking at for the deadline? I don't know what Sherrod's hearing or anything else right now, but the two things I was looking at on Celtics blog today, I wrote about second drafts, like bowl, that we saw already.
Bobby, sorry to cut you off. Real quick, though. You had an article on another...
On CLNS.
On CLNS.
Bobby, I don't think
I don't want to spoil it.
sorry.
I don't want to spoil it, but you had a trade proposal.
For Ricky Rubio.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's going to get the people
because
going.
One blown ACL, trading for one guy on a blown ACL isn't enough. You want them to trade for a second guy with a blown ACL.
Yes. No, I mean, what did we say? We were like,
Bobby never thought about it like that. He never thought about it.
Could you?
So I like your thinking here, but go on. I like your thinking, to be honest.
Could you go get a guy like that? And it stunk because Cleveland cashed in on him, and he helped Cleveland, and he was great gluing together everything there. And it was like, oh, geez, the Celtics should have made that move. Well, he's hurt now. He's out till December, torn ACL, December 29th. But the Cavs are looking to move that contract so you could get his bird rights. You could clear out Richardson and Schroeder, who would help Cleveland immensely as they're trying to make that push. This would effectively be a sell move, obviously, on this year. But it's the one way. I'm looking at all these different deals.
Sherrod's already holding his head, man.
I understand it. I get why people are going to roll their eyes.
I got to get out of here.
I get why people are going to roll their eyes at this deal.
He's like, these clowns.
Let's say the goal...
Wow.
Let's say the goal was to clear the deck and get these young guys minutes like we're hearing. And, we've debated whether that's actually their plan. Say that's their plan. They want to get Romeo, Neesmith, and Pritchard all the minutes they can. Well, that's how you match money on Richardson and Schroeder hand out the door without bringing anybody back because Rubio's injured. All of a sudden, Romeo, Pritchard, Neesmith are playing 20, 25 minutes a night because Richardson's gone and Schroeder's gone. And maybe you get a pick out of it. I know they have Houston's second-round pick, which is 33rd overall. So that was my deal. The 33rd overall pick right now in the draft next year. Rubio, who's a free agent that you could potentially keep, for Schroeder and Richardson.
Bobby, I hate it. I'm just going to cut straight to the chase. I hate it because I don't think it helps you in the short term, obviously, because he's out for the rest of the year. I don't think I'm comfortable putting my chips in the table for a guy who's going to be 32 years old coming off an ACL injury, who, by the way, has a ton of miles. Because if you remember, when Ricky Rubio first kind of came onto the scene, he was kind of Luka Doncic before Luka was Luka Doncic.
But what are you giving up? You're not giving up much there.
That dude's been balling since 16 years old, since he was 16.
Yeah, he really, and he had so much hype where people thought he was a little underwhelming coming in the league, but he really is a super talented point guard. And Sherrod, the reason why I don't hate it,
he's probably like 35, but whatever.
I'll let Sherrod finish.
Spain's not keeping track.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
The reason I don't hate it is because you're not giving up anything that matters. Because theoretically, Schroeder's gone. Yeah. And what was the other player? Oh, Richardson.
Richardson,
so
yeah.
I think I like Richardson. I really do, and I think that if you had a really strong team, he would be an integral part of it. You don't though. But you give yourself you put yourself in a position to get a player. If you want to keep Tatum and Brown, you really truly want to build around Tatum and Brown, you need a player just like Ricky Rubio who's going to get them the ball, is going to distribute, is going to be the guy who runs the offense that everyone wants to see that happen.
And he is going to be until
my only hang up, and Bobby just hinted at it, is when's he going to be back and how healthy is he going to look? I'm not like, it's not like an ACL where I'm, you can come back from an ACL now, which I'm not concerned about that, but it's more of a timetable of when and how long it's going to take. I don't want a Gordon Hayward situation where he comes back and the first year is completely like, a shell of himself.
How long do ACLs take these days, Sherrod? I know it's different for everybody, but
it's different for everybody, but it's more complicated and involved when you're older. And as I mentioned, he's going to be 32, and let's just assume it takes a year. So he comes back around December. Then you've got the time that he has to ramp up conditioning-wise and all that. So you're probably looking at him coming around and playing sometime after the All-Star break. So let me get this straight. We punted on this season, and the guy that we punted for isn't going to help us.
We're going to have all a conversation a year from now being like, we need to punt on this season and trade Rubio.
How much help is that going to provide Jalen and Jason when the guy that is supposed to help them isn't going to be around until after the All-Star break?
That's some heavy Kings vibes.
It's not all about Rubio. Well, you take a step back. Maybe you fall
That's some
deep
sh-
into the lottery,
That's some
which would
that's some shit that Sacramento would do. Okay. That's
would it
really
be
what
the
is.
worst? Would it be the worst thing in the world
You're
to
right.
slide back a little bit this
It
year?
would not be the worst thing in the world. But if I'm going to do something like that with the facts that I just laid out to you, where you could potentially be looking at a guy who doesn't come around until after the All-Star break,
No,
you
that would
better give
stink.
me.
You'd
I need to
like
get
this.
first round pick.
After the
You'd
I
like.
All-Star
need to
break,
get.
that's a
I
long
need
time
to
to be
get
out, right?
a first round pick,
I'm
which I don't
asking.
think you'll get.
Well, the tricky thing is Cleveland can flip Rubio's contract with a first for Eric Gordon, who they're looking at, as well as Karis LeVert, two guys that they could potentially acquire. And that would obviously be better for them than Schroeder and Richardson. But say Houston says no to that and Cleveland or Indiana says no to that, all of a sudden, Schroeder and Richardson could help Cleveland off their bench. They've seen them coming off of
sense for them.
Yeah.
I don't know
And
about
the Rubio thing, look, it'd be great if Rubio could pan out here, but if he doesn't, you get to see your young guys for the rest of the year. You get a much better pick. Who knows? Maybe it's like top 14 in the lottery there if you fall out of the playoffs. And you finally figure out what you have in your young guys. So Neesmith is either going to prove it or lose it. Romeo certainly. And Pritchard is going to have to kind of be making a statement by the end of this year too. It's everything we've kind of asked for at this point out of this season. Otherwise, I don't think you're buying that much at the deadline this year. I don't think enough's going to be available to be worth buying. And listen, they keep talking about selling Horford. Who's taking Horford? That massive contract right now. So it's Schroeder and Richardson. I think this is the way to get the most that you possibly can for Schroeder by packaging Richardson with them. It's not a perfect deal, but I think it's a creative one, given where Cleveland and Boston is at.
Okay.
Let's get it done, Brad. I'm calling Brad right after this.
All right, Bobby. We want all the season-ending injury players. Bring them all over here.
Yeah. Brad, don't get on that
Bird
phone.
rights. Give
Reading
your
a quote.
bird rights.
Can we get Jamal Murray in Denver, please?
Yeah. Oh, I actually would take him. I would. That's a player I would take a risk on.
You see what I'm saying, Jimmy?
That's a great torn ACL right there.
Yeah,
Well-
that ACL, I'll gamble on right there. That one's coming back.
We didn't make anyone feel any better about the Celtics by the end of this. That certainly isn't. I don't think I'm going to be
Guess
racking
what,
up
Bobby?
the.
They didn't exactly make us feel better about the way they played, so we're even.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Jimmy,
It's
do you
not our
think-
job to
Do you
make.
think that trade piece is going to be racking up the views for us? I don't know, but it's not the most exciting trade idea. I'll give you that.
Probably not.
But it's realistic. Anyway, Josue's going to get on to New Orleans. He's heading right on the Pelicans Celtics tomorrow night. So we will be back. We'll cut this one off.
I got a question for Josue before he goes.
What's up, Jimmy? What you
What
got?
over there? Is that a homemade mask, bro? You got a girl or something that made that for you, and like you better wear it on the show or something? Like, what's going on? Looks like a sheet.
The one that I usually rock snapped. I had to go to the store, and these guys had like these.
Where'd you get that, Michael? Arts and crafts or something, dude?
Yeah, as soon as I get on camera, I'm taking this thing right off, man. So,
yeah, bro. It's too late.
Check
man.
out that.
That's forever now. It's on the internet. It's forever.
It's like a hot air balloon you got on your
That's
face.
gonna be your new
man.
Twitter
Damn.
avatar.
Oh,
man.
damn, Sherrod. Yeah, Sherrod, you were sitting next to me the whole game. Couldn't tell me. Yeah.
I tried not to. That's why I didn't say anything to you, man.
I could have sworn
Sherrod
somebody
type-
made that for you. It was like, you better wear. I
Sherrod
better
type-
see you wear.
Sherrod type Gary was like, yo, look at this dude right now. Look at him. That's what y'all was laughing about.
Yeah, we were. Not gonna lie.
Check out
We
that
were.
trade piece,
I love the
CLNSmedia.com.
But it's huge. Yeah, I love it.
And Bobby, the Celtics are 0-1 since you shaved the stash, man. What happened there? You just a little mental breakdown. You're like, I gotta shave it.
Sometimes I go for a fresh start. I'm not feeling 100%. I just go for a full shave, fresh start. It's kind of like it's a little thing. It makes you feel like you're starting fresh, clean slate.
It looks
but
good.
It'll be back. It'll be back very quickly.
Okay.
Just in time for the storm. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
How's it looking up there?
Hey, Sherrod.
Oh, jeez. Here we go. 15 minutes of snow talk.
Here we go. No, Sherrod wasn't living here in 78, so he hasn't really. I don't know if he has any.
2015 was pretty bad.
He's
I saw that. I saw that tweet.
He's seen plenty of snow in his day, dude. He's seen plenty.
I was gonna say, Jimmy, I grew up in Syracuse. Don't talk to me about snow.
Syracuse
Yeah,
is way worse.
Exactly.
This is a Syracuse S. This
Yeah,
is a Syracuse S storm coming.
Yeah,
No.
I'll say that.
They see these storms like every 3 weeks. So
It's nothing.
I'm saying a prayer. All the boomers that are watching the show tonight from the New England area, I'm saying a prayer for you because if this storm is bigger than the blizzard of 78, I don't know what you're going to talk about every winter all winter for the rest of your life. That's all I hear from the booth. Oh, this is nothing compared to the blizzard of '78. Oh, you should have been there. You should have been there in 1978. Oh, you should have seen it. I don't know what they're going to talk about after this.
More on that with the
fingers
Jimmy.
crossed, man. That it's not bigger than the blizzard of '78 for their sake.
Yeah. We're
More
gonna
of
revisit
that
this when John's on. John knows
on the
78.
Jimmy-
He'll tell us about 78.
What else, John? All about it. John was like 30 years old during the blizzard. So you know all about it. You know all about it, dude.
More of that on the Jimmy John podcast tomorrow. CLNSmedia.com, CLNS social channels. Josue keeping everybody up to date on Celtics CLNS and Instagram and everywhere else. Check out
sir.
Sherrod on Full Court Press on Bulletin, where he's covering the NBA at large. And we'll be back tomorrow, 7 o'clock, a little earlier tomorrow, 7 o'clock tip between the Pelicans and Celtics. We'll see if I make it. I do not have a snowblower, so I'm going back and legs and shovel on this one.
Oh, wow. You know, that's a mistake. I live in the city. I don't have to see a shovel tomorrow. I'm good.
Bobby got to take that. He's got to get iced down after that one. Man. He's got to take the ice bath or something.
This is going to accelerate the move out for sure.
After that, dude.
Yeah. All right.
See you guys.
Adios. See you tomorrow.
See y'all.